Mo. I'm unexpectedly not going to work today, so I thought I would do a try a chapter video. And I thought I would eat some birthday cake. I've only done one try a chapter video before. That was a little less than a year ago. I got rid of 2 of the books from that. I've read one. One is my booktube spin book for next month in March. I can't remember what the last one was. For that try a chapter, I picked 5 books from when I cleaned out my TBR shelf last March. For this try a chapter, I kind of sort of organized my TBR shelf a couple of months ago, and these were 5 books that either they were books that I'm not really interested in, like YA, or they were books that I got as cover grabs. They were books that a friend gave me or I found in my basement box book, but I'm not really sure I still want to read. Since I have some extra time on my hands, I figured this would be a good time to try a chapter of all these 5 books and see if I want to keep them or get rid of them. The oldest book that I have to try is called Confessions from a Dark Wood by Raymond. This is a book that I'm not sure where I got, but it looks like it's maybe self-published or a very small publisher, and it's kind of falling apart actually. I refound it last year in my basement box books, but never got around to actually reading it. I have no idea what it's about, and I don't know if it's really something that I'm actually interested in reading. The next book is Pretty Things by Janelle Brown. This book was given to me by my friend Avery. She thought that I might like it. I'm sort of interested in this thriller. I haven't heard very many people talk about it, although I recently saw someone who did enjoy it. It's just really long and it just seems like a domestic thriller. I'm not really into those types of books, but who knows? Maybe this will be the one that turns me around. Next, I have Mad Mouse by Grabenstein. Now, this is an interesting case because I'll probably keep this book no matter what, whether I really am dying to read it or not, because this one is set in New Jersey. It's part of a series set on the Jersey Shore, I think about a small town cop. This is like the 2nd or 3rd in the series, so if I like the first chapter, maybe I'll try to get the first book. Next is Heather the Totality by Mathew Weiner. This was my cover grab. I don't know why, but I just really enjoyed this cover, and it's extremely short. This is another book that I've heard literally no one talk about, but seems like maybe it could be a book that people like. I think it's about a mother and father trying to protect their child. And lastly, our most controversial book for this try chapter is Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is definitely a booktube darling. A lot of booktubers I follow really enjoy this one. It is about kind of a cultish, puritanical society, but there are witches, and the main character knows that her family is from witches, so she bucks the traditions of this closed-minded society and goes out looking for her family. Now, the reason that I'm not sure about this one is just that it's a YA book and it's like a witchy book. I don't really read a lot of witchy, fantasy, YA. I don't read a lot of any of those things. So a book that's all of those things, I don't know if it's really going to work for me. I'm going to eat some more cake, read a chapter of each of these books, and get back to you with what I think. Oh, this one is inscribed, which is cool. So, Confessions from a Dark Wood. Let's see what the chapters are like. The first chapter of Confessions from a Dark Wood is only like 7 pages, so I'll read that first whole chapter. I have to take my glasses off because I can't read with my glasses on. The first chapter starts out with our main character, Nick Bray, and he is at the funeral of his father. He is not happy about this, but it seems like his father and he had a very difficult relationship. His father was a well-known and well-loved professor, and Nick seems to be a little bit of a screw-up, at least he was in his father's eyes. But Nick states that his father dying is one of his worst nightmares, so we're not really sure if they had a good relationship or a bad relationship. While he's at the funeral, a young man comes up to him and says that he is an intern for a law firm that is run by a former student of Nick's father's. This kind of prestigious lawyer wants to offer him a job. Nick is confused as to why. He doesn't think that his father and this man were particularly good friends, and it seems like he's a little bit of a eccentric and possibly not nice character. Nick does talk about it in a way that we know that he is going to go work for this law firm and he is eventually going to take this job. So that's kind of interesting. So you know that he's taking this kind of potentially shady job. You know that he's a little bit of a pill popper. You know that he has not gotten along with his father, not followed in his father's academic footsteps. So I'm interested. I'm intrigued. I don't know if this is because perhaps this is an indie press or a self-published work, but there's a ton of typos already. There was a couple of lines that I had to read a few times because the typos were so bad I couldn't tell what the intent of the sentence was. And it's definitely like extremely poorly made book. It's like very thin paper. The binding is coming out already. And I do think that this is obviously quite an amateurish effort from an amateur writer. Now, I've read a couple of books like that already this year, so maybe this is my year to read self-published amateur authors, and like I always say, good for them. Right now, I'm not sold on this book. I could be interested to finish it, but I'm not gripped by it. I'm not dying to continue. So this could be one that I just let go and don't worry about in the future. The next book that I am going to try a chapter from is Pretty Things. Now, this is kind of the opposite of this in that this is like a Target book. It's mass market. Obviously, a lot of people have read it. Obviously, a lot of money went into it. I like the cover of Confessions from a Dark Wood because the title, you can't really see it, but the title is like shiny, and that's the only title on there, which is kind of neat. And then it's on the spine. And I like the cover of Pretty Things. I don't like that it has the quote, and I hate that it has the Target thing, but I like that it's like that very thriller, like water vibe, and then there's like the gold chains and rings and jewelry. That's kind of interesting. Let's see how long the first chapter is this. There's a quote, there's a prologue that's like 2 pages, and then the first chapter, like 7 pages. So let's read the quote in the prologue, see how that goes, and then see if I want to read the first chapter. Today is definitely not going the way I thought it was going to go. My camera died, and I was like, well, I'll just finish this chapter, and then I'll shut my eyes for a minute, and I'll get my battery and everything will be fine. Of course, I fell asleep for like 2 hours. I did finish the prologue and the first chapter of Pretty Things by Janelle Brown. This was interesting. The prologue is about Lake Tahoe and like the secrets that Lake Tahoe might hold. Could there be dead bodies? What's the story there? A little bit of history about it, a little bit of lore about it. Where's this all going? Then our first chapter has a break that says Nina. Nina's chapters go on for a while, and then I did see that there was another woman's name in here, so it breaks up, which I don't like multiple perspective stories when they're chapter to chapter. I really don't like when you get only one chapter from each perspective. Sometimes I don't even like it when you get one chapter between perspectives, like The Wife Upstairs by Rachel Hawkins had a few chapters from our main character and then one chapter from another person, a few chapters and then one chapter. And I didn't really like that either. But this seems like it's whole sections of Nina and then whole sections of another woman. And that I have had good luck with. The first chapter of this was a woman at a club talking about all the beautiful things, all the pretty things, the clothes, the clubwear, the revealing skirts, the high heels, the champagne, and she's kind of watching this one guy who's making a spectacle of himself, and it turns out that he is some Russian, possibly mobster bigwig. She kind of leads him on, then she drugs him, and then she takes him to his house and checks out out his entire house, taking photos, casing the joint. Then she leaves. She goes back to her boyfriend, to her house, to her boyfriend, and no one is the wiser that she was ever at this Russian mob son's house. I mean, I'm intrigued. Sure. I would like to know who she is, what she's doing, why she cased the house. I mean, she seemed like she does this a lot, but she seemed kind of amateur-ish at it. She was still like hyped up on the adrenaline. She still, was nervous. So I'd be interested to know like how she got into whatever she is doing. It was very similar to this in that I could read on, but I'm not like chomping at the bit to read on. And this book is, no joke, 473 pages. I don't even like to read good books that are 473 pages, and I don't see this being such a good book that I'm gonna like really, really want to read it and really, really be captivated. A lot of the books that are that long or are longer tend to have really big margins, really large font, and this isn't like that. This is pretty decent amount of writing. There is a lot of dialogue and there is a lot of like chapter breaks, which means that basically you're getting a whole blank page. 470 pages? I don't know. Now let's move on and try Mad Mouse. Like I said, no matter what happens with this book, I think I'm going to keep this book and I am eventually going to read it. For this book, try a chapter is more like, do I care enough to get the first book and seriously read this series? Seriously read this series. This is the first book that the first chapter started on page 1. So the first chapter is only 8 pages. The font in this is very small. I read the first chapter of Mad Mouse. Actually, I read the first 2 chapters of Mad Mouse. I wanted to keep going after I read it. It's about a part-time cop. He's out with his friends for a few days off, and they're celebrating an annual event where 6 friends, 6, 7, 8, I'm not sure how many friends, all get together and celebrate Toasted Marshmallow Day. So they're down on the beach with some beers. They're having a good time, keeping to themselves, and someone starts firing paintballs at them. One of the friends is shot in the eye. Everyone rushes together to try and help her and get her to a hospital. And that's the end of the second chapter. That was pretty interesting. I liked that we got to meet our main character, Danny. We get to know that he's a part-time cop in a beach town, but we know that he's also hoping to be a full-time cop when summer's over. We know that he has seen a dead body and that sometimes there are murders at the shore, but we're not sure if that's him just telling us or maybe that's from a previous book. But when he makes an illegal left turn on the shore roads, his partner cop happens to catch him, and we find out that that was a previous book in this series. So it's nicely laid out, the relationship between the 2 cops, the older, wiser, militant cop, and the young, brash, wannabe cop. We get to find out that they solved a case together, that there was a little bit of notoriety around that, and that that was a couple of years ago, so probably a couple of books ago. We also know that this group of friends hung out for the last 10 years, so we assume that they're pretty good friends and pretty happy group of people. We're introduced to a past love of Danny's who's in the friend group, so a lot happened in a short amount of time. I will say that there were a lot of friends and people, and right now I don't know who any of them are. I don't really know who was hit in the eye. I don't really know which character that was. I know it wasn't his current love interest, but I'm not sure if it was his past love interest. The most intriguing out of the 3 books I've read for sure. Will definitely continue this, and I think it's pretty clear too that I don't need to get the first book before reading this one. I could read this series out of order. Next we have Heather the Totality, and this one is super short, the shortest on the list, even though several of them were short. It's only 134 pages. It looks like it's kind of told in parts, and the first part looks like it's 20 pages, but there are a lot of page breaks. So I think what I'll do is just read maybe 8 pages, because that's what I've read of most of the other books, and see what I think about this one. I read 9 pages. It's mostly about Mark and Karen, how they meet and how they decide to marry, not necessarily fall in love. It's told in very short bursts of information, and it definitely looks like the whole book is told that way. It's very no nonsense. This is what it is. This is what's happening. This is why Mark liked Karen. This is why Karen liked Mark. I'm not sure what conflict or interest there might be in this book, but if I could read it in 2 hours, I might as well keep it, right? Okay, on to the last book, the most loved, I would say, book to book from this. This is also one of the longer books at over 350 pages. Not really my vibe, but that's okay. Let me read the prologue. Let me see how I feel about chapter 1. So I read the first part of the first chapter of Year of the Witching. I didn't read the whole thing, partly because we're losing the light and this video has now taken like 7 hours just because I fell asleep in the middle. I did like it and I am moderately intrigued. It seems like it might be a little heavy-handed. It definitely was like all or nothing, doom or gloom, hellfire or sunshine, heaven and hell, father and mother. So we start with the prologue where our main character Emmanuel is born and her mother dies directly after her birth and her grandmother gives her her name. When she gives her name, her mother says, "That is what the woman in the woods told me, the beast." So we know that there is a woman in the woods. We know that Emmanuel's mother went there. And then in the beginning of the first chapter, we see Emmanuel in church. She is going through a ceremony or a ritual similar to, what is that one where you like eat the blood of the father, where you drink the thing? I don't know. I'm not Christian, so I'm not sure. But a ritual similar to that you might get every week in church, but it elevates the father and denounces the mother. So obviously in this society, men are held in revere and regard, and women are considered to be potentially evil. Emmanuel feels ostracized and called out by the preacher. There's also mention of kids teasing her about being illegitimate. So we get the idea that she is known to be an outsider already in her community, but there's no impression that she's been outside of her community yet. I liked that there was an animal sacrifice, but she didn't take part in it and she didn't want to see it, so we on paper didn't have to see it. That's not to say that we won't get any animal sacrifice in the future, but I kind of liked that aspect and honed in on that aspect of at least the very first few pages, because it could have opened with an animal sacrifice, been really shocking, and maybe people would have liked that, but I would not have liked that. I'm undecided on this one. Out of the 5 books that I am trying today, I don't think we did very well, but I don't think we did very badly. The one that I'm definitely most excited for is Mad Mouse. I'll definitely be reading this. If I can fit it into my March TBR, I might as well, just because it is March Mystery Madness. If not, I will keep my hands on it and I will get to it eventually. I'm definitely also keeping Heather the Totality, just because it's extremely short. I could read it in one afternoon. It would be great for a readathon or something like that, or just when I'm in between books, or maybe when I'm reading a heavy book and I need something in between. There was mention of eating disorders in this already and death from eating disorders, so I don't think it's going to be a light book, but I do think it would be a good palate cleansing book. I feel like I want to keep Year of the Witching just because it is a booktube darling and maybe I will get to it. It's also written by a Black author, so I would feel bad if I tried 5 books and the one written by a Black author I got rid of. It did seem interesting, so I'll definitely be keeping this one. These 2, if I had to get rid of one, I would get rid of Pretty Things, because I feel like it's a book that I could probably pick up again anywhere, and Confessions in a Dark Wood, since it is an indie press book, probably won't ever find again. I wasn't amazed by this book. This one is also very short, less than 200 pages, so I don't think it would be a quick read like Heather the Totality, but it wouldn't be an excruciatingly long read. This is a maybe. I'm going to keep it as a maybe. I think I'm going to let Pretty Things go. I don't see myself reading this almost 500-page book anytime soon, and it wasn't exciting enough for me that I want to keep it. I have so many other mysteries that I think I would rather read. I'm not much into this style of mystery. So I will say thank you so much to my friend Avery. I'm going to go ahead and pass this one on to a little free library. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this try a chapter now is because March is my TBR month, where I work on reorganizing my library, where I work on organizing and paring down my TBR, and I know that I'm going to come up with at least 5 more books to do a try a chapter with. So I wanted to get this try a chapter out of the way now. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I have here. Let me know if you liked any of these books. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. From reading disorders. I'm happy to send Pretty Things to someone else who might really like it, but I'm sad because I was dying to bend this spine and break this spine. It's such a fat spine. Wish I could just crack this baby open.